I've yet to do a complete walkthrough of this, which is probably our biggest food forest system. It's a bit breezy today, but I'll keep it out of the wind as much as possible, and I'll show you through. Got my cheat sheets, because currently we've got everywhere that you see a small cane with a yellow cap, that's an understory species, and until they're up a bit higher, we've just got them to mark so they don't get stepped on. And the bigger trees, mostly, there's still a couple outstanding, but mostly are marked out by these bigger posts that some of them have been tied to temporarily, but not for long. These trees will cope without strapping. They've been selected for that reason, and these posts will have name tags on eventually. But in the meantime, I've got cheat sheets. So those two canes there mark out, I see, stripping over trees. They mark out rhubarb, thank you. So yeah, there's the same variety gone in there. So it's on, that way's north, south is over there. So it'll get a certain amount of sun in the afternoon, but it's not prime spot. This is an autumn olive, which is just turned a corner this year. I think it's going to come on well, and that's going to, spread out and make a decent sized shrub. Behind, on to the side of that, this is a Saskatoon, a Juneberry. They did really well last year. You can see they're just coming out into flower now. And they actually produced fruit last year, even though it was their first year, which by the time we noticed, it was too late to take the fruit off. And yeah, we just let them do their thing, and they've still bounced back really well this year. This is an American elder. Now, according to all the books, this flowers later than the European elder. And because it's self-sterile, you can use these things for just having flowers all through the season without having to worry about them getting pollinated and turning into fruit. Yeah, nobody told ours, because the European elder that we've got, they just they keep flowering all summer as well. So we'll see what happens with them. It could be interesting, but yeah, they went off a really good tasting fruit as well. So giving that a go. We got a few of those, because this started out as, well, it would have been out round here really, but we've taken some of it off to duplicate elsewhere. The big canes on the way around with the big green caps are, that's a form of black currant, that is Ben Hope. Some of them are really big and healthy, well, most of them are really big and healthy, and that'll be the outer skin from this section. And this is a Cotoneaster, which I'm not keen on Cotoneaster generally, but I mean, pollinators absolutely love them. So we've got quite a few of them up here in this food forest just as a pollinator attractant, and to support them and bring them in, so then they can do the job with pollinating the apples and pears and so on. So in this whole section, this is the only top fruit that we've got, and I don't even need my cheat sheet here. That is Laxton Superb. So that's a good apple variety. Should do well here, and all of the top fruit varieties have got comfrey cuttings. You can see that they're all limp. That's because they were only planted a couple of days ago. Some of the bigger ones that had loads of leaves on, I've cut the leaves and dumped them at the base of the trees. But these, they'll bounce back. It's been pretty dry, but we got some rain due this week, so they're going to have wilted because they've been dug up and transplanted and been cut into sections and so on. But they'll come back really aggressively, and every single top fruit tree here now has at least 4 or 5 good comfrey divisions or big cuttings underneath. So by the end of this year, it'll have started to fill out this space quite nicely, and by next year, as they start to come up, I'll be able to step them over and crush them down a little bit, and they'll cover a big area and clump out, and it'll actually take out the grass, because no tree does well with a lot of grass competition. So, well, most don't. A few of the nitrogen fixing species do quite well, but not fruit species. So yeah, we shouldn't need to be adding any more mulch and wood chip and stuff, because it's all stuff that needs ferrying around. I'd rather have something that'll just grow here and take it out. We've got a fair few things like this. Now these are just generic things that have been put in just to create a little bit of a windbreak and a bit of a barrier. So I mean, couldn't even tell you what sort of currants these are, but there's loads of them. You see, they're really, and it's not a flowering currant, it is a fruiting variety, and we've got a load of willow as well, but nothing specific. They're just going to get culled out eventually. So almost like a nurse species. Here we have, that's a Japanese flowering quince, so that'll become a decent sized shrub in time. Now, but all of these rows here with the wire and the posts are willow that'll come up, and we'll make a willow fedge from it. Inside that there's one tree there, and we can't agree whether that's an apple variety or a pear variety. So yeah, because we don't want to have two apples next to each other or two pears next to each other or so on, because you've got the possibility of disease or pest jumping between the trees more easily, no two trees are next to each other. So for example, the other side of the pod from that apple tree, I think that's a cherry actually, but it's definitely not an apple because, you know, they haven't been planted that way. They're just not next to each other. So the next one on the swale, that's a plum, because I know there's two apples, there's a pear and there's a plum on that swale. And because it was the only one we had that definitely wasn't something that could cause issues being next to that one was the plum. So that's the one that's on the end. That is actually the Denby plum. It's a protected designation, you know, breed. Phenomenal stuff. It's the only native wild plum that's still in existence. So that's very cool. It's just starting to leaf out now, so I'm really pleased with that. We're going to have to look after those. All the ones on the top swale are, you know, they're fancier ones that would, you know, we've got the real prime location. We'll cover them as we go across. But right, so that's it for this block. So into the next section, and this is where I need my cheat sheet. So right, here we are. Right now, every block, so you can see this is one block here. All the understory currant trees, all the currant bushes are the same type. So in this particular one, it's a red currant, and that's red like. So you can see that's a lot. So every top tree has 2 or 3 currant understories. We've got other understory species to bring in as well yet. There's a bird going nuts over there. Oh yeah, they're nesting, right. So yeah, that's red currant. This section behind me doesn't have understory currants in it yet because I want to put a variety in there that we haven't got yet. So I've left that completely blank. There's no understory, but I'll come to that one in a minute. So everything marked with a cane and a yellow cap is a red currant. But here is a tune. This is Tuna Sedensis, which is, I mean, it's a beautiful tree when it comes out. I was hoping that it overwintered well, and it has. So I'm very, very interested in how this will do. It looks a bit like an ash tree, but very strong tasting leaves. The shoots are used in Chinese cookery. It's got like almost like a caramelized onion kind of flavour. So it's, yeah, really cool. And you can take the leaves and dry them down and keep them as a spice, as a condiment for use throughout the rest of the year and so on. Very, very cool. We've got another one as backup in the greenhouse still, but if this one does as well as I'm hoping it's going to, that one's coming out this year as well. It's a member of the mahogany family, so it's got like Chinese cedar. It's got a few names. It's not a cedar, but all the names are misleading. It's actually, there's nothing else like it. It's phenomenal, and it's a really beautiful tree when it comes out. So I hope it copes with the wind. This is just starting to leaf out now. This is a Japanese pepper tree. It's we've got another one further along. And again, it'll grow to about, you know, 1.5 to 2 meters in height and width. So, I mean, between these two, you know, it's a interesting amount of, you know, flavour that you know, it's better than just going and getting, you know, stuff from the shops. So yeah, that's very cool, and that's doing well. It's doing better than the other one, in fact. And this here is another American elder. So, you know, exactly the same thing. It'll form a clump. There's a couple of meters across, maybe 2 or 3 meters high. So it'll, you know, pretty much fill this space in time, but again, won't get huge. You know, it's like the European elder will grow quite big in forest conditions. This won't. It'll stay as more of a shrub. And in the middle of it all, we have the autumn olive again as a nitrogen fixer. And you can see around the mulch, just the grass is greener with, you know, it has been all spring. The nitrogen fixation is brilliant. So hang on. Yeah, there you go, red currant. So yeah, that's a lot of currants as well. And they're quite small at this stage. They went in as cuttings, but most of them are taken. I think we haven't got any failures here. Now in between the pods, as I say, there's no understory here yet. There's another...
Rhubarb.
Thank you. The rhubarb there, and it's a different variety from the one that's over there. And once it gets divided up, it'll do its thing. Now, last year, we didn't get any fruit on any of these. We didn't even get any blossom. It was a really cold snap late on, and we lost all of it. So that I know is Tickle Pink. That's an apple variety. And we've just got, might get a few blossoms on that this year. But this here is, right, wrong cheat sheet. Where are we? The conference pear, that's what this one is. So yeah, that's doing really well. We got blossom on that this year, so hopefully we'll get a bit of fruit. And this here is Stella, so that's a cherry. I mean, look at that, that's beautiful. I like cherry. We've got a lot of cherry in the system, so hopefully that'll do well. And all these trees have got full mulch rings now, have come free, so you know, that'll come on, and it'll just get done a couple of times a year. You know, come inside it, use it to feed the tree. This is a Trifoliate Orange, which is theoretically a cold hardy orange. We've got two little ones, and this one is just starting to leaf out down in the tube there. So yeah, we've tried them a few times in pots, and even though they're definitely hard enough to cope here, they've got hammered. So I think it's probably slugs that have got them. So I might put a little bit of you know, the non-toxic slug pellets, the ones that aren't damaging the wildlife, just to try and get it to get some leaves on in spring, so it just doesn't keep getting grazed to death. But we're optimistic. They're tucked in against the pod, so that it gets yeah, a reasonable amount of protection, and you know, it's facing southish. And it's the same on the one on the other side there. That's another Japanese flowering quince. Now these two here, they are pawpaw. Now we've got 4 we put in the ground. We did a video about it recently. 2 of them are looking really well. These 2 aren't looking so great, but they have loads of unopened leaf buds lower down. So I'm hoping that it's just a bit of burn from the wind, and that, you know, they'll come back and survive a bit lower down. But even if they don't, I'd expected at least 2 of them to die. So you know, it's still a little bit exposed up here for them. So we'll see how that goes. Right, we'll get to the others when we get round there, but let's look at the next section. Oh yeah, and buddleia. We've got buddleia tucked in everywhere again, just to bring the pollinators in. Right, now this section here, hang on. Right, I like this one. So this has got, oh, these are completely wrong way around. Right. Okay, so this here has an understory of white currant. The dividing line is basically here, so everything forward of that is white currant. So you can see we've put some around these overstory trees here, but further down there's not so many of them. So it's fine. You know, as they come up and they, you know, develop, we'll take a load of cuttings from them, and then we'll continue that down and around. But this is a Staghorn Sumac, which pioneer tree. You get them in car parks and all sorts, but it's where the spice sumac is derived. So again, another spice tree that do really well here. And we tried, I don't know, 3 of them I think I bought, and they all died in transit. In the end, I just bought a packet of seed and grow out 20-30 of them, and they're dotted all over the place now. So that's coming on really well this year, and we'll see how that continues. White currant around that. This is a small leafed lime, which is just starting to come on now. This was transplanted here this last winter, again with white currant. We've got another Saskatoon. That's another Japanese pepper tree. Actually, that's looking really well now. So I'm optimistic about these. We've got a few different types. These are definitely the Japanese ones, and yeah, really pleased with them. They come on very well. And this top fruit is Coe's Golden Drop. So yeah, that's very cool. So that's what, like a golden plum. So that'll be, yeah, really nice. And of course all these will need understory shrubs around them yet. And that's another American elder. So again, that'll form a nice big dense shrub here, and you know, fill in this space really nicely. Right, this section here, let's have a look. So right, that's another conference. Hang on. No, it isn't. This is a Spartan, so that's an apple. There you go. And let's have a look. Yep, that's a conference there. So there's the other conference pear is way the other side of the pod, and there's 2 trees between that conference and the other conference. So yeah, that's a Spartan apple. This one here is actually one of them, not that one. One of them's actually labelled up. That is, where are we? I'm going to say Sunburst. I think it's Sunburst. It's something burst, like, you know.
Not Stella.
Nope, Stella's the next. Where's the Stella? Hang on. Stella's that one. There we go. So that one over there, that equal position, but on that block, that's the Stella, and that's the one that's got the label on. Right, yes. So this is Sunburst, I think it's Sunburst. So again, another cherry variety. I really like cherry trees, they're lovely. And that's just starting to come out into blossom now. So yeah, hopefully we'll get some fruit this year. Over here is another of the Trifoliate Orange. Now we started using, we've got a lot of nitrogen fixing trees, but they're still quite young yet. They're a bit small for going out, most of them anyway. So we're going with some perennial blue lupin just to get some nitrogen fixation going on. These things, when you pot them on, the development on nodules on the roots is phenomenal. So since then, I've planted today 1,200 perennial blue lupin seeds on all the swales. Well, not the one swale, but on most of the swales and through this whole food forest. So if even 1% of them come, we're going to have a lot of lupin, which look lovely. I really like them. So, and we've got some more in the nursery, just belt and braces just in case. That's another flowering quince. We've got another cotoneaster just to bring in the pollinators, and yep, that is the conference pear. It's had a little bit of windburn, but not going to worry about it. Actually, not convinced that is windburn. Might have to look at that, but anyway. And in the middle of it, we've got another autumn olive as nitrogen fixation, again, which will share, through leaf drop and so on, will share its nitrogen through the whole system. So the idea being that we never really have to do any fertility up here, it just deals with itself. So I'll come through a couple of times a year, slide the comfrey, and we'll get that rotting down and feeding the top fruit varieties. And we've also got nitrogen fixation from currently the autumn olive, but we've got other things going in as well in time. And also, realistically, 2 o'clock in the morning, customer goes out needing a pee, they're just going to pick a tree, especially when there's only one person on site. No one's going to cross the toilet block. So again, a lot of nitrogen. So that's kind of been calculated into the nitrogen budgeting for the site. So next block over, and the natural breaks in it are the view from the front of the pod. So we've got customers inside or sitting out front. They're surrounded by food forest, but the view's still open, so they can still see out over the horizon. They can still see over the loch. Right, so next section is we're back into Ravada. So that's another red currant variety, and again, that's the canes with the little yellow caps. But this is an autumn olive, same age as the other two, but a lot more developed. This was originally spent 3 years living on one of the swales, and swales are essentially tree production systems. They do incredibly well. So you can see how much faster it's grown than all the others, and it's coming on really well now. So that's that. There's another American elder there with the red currant around it, and this has got red currant around it as well. But then we're into the top fruit. This one is Beware Hardy, so that's a pear, and that seems to be doing really well. They probably won't do a great deal in the first year. It takes trees at least 1 year, sometimes 2 years before they really start to thrive here. It's just one of those things you just factor into it. So you plant something, doesn't do much for a year, next year it'll come on, or maybe even the year after. So we're not expecting a huge amount from them, whereas the trees that are between the pods, being a bit more sheltered, they've been in for 2 years in the current location. It's only this year they're really looking well. They didn't look as good last year. They survived, and it was a very tough year last year. It was very drought prone. We had months without rain. Everything got very, very dry. So surviving's good, but I'd rather. And again, we didn't have much spring. It was a bad year. Then this is, I think that's the winter gem, is it? Yep, that's the winter gem. So that's another apple tree. Again, a variety that should do well here. And yeah, there's no apple anywhere near it. And this is a golden gauge. So that's the Ulin's golden gauge, and it's a lovely tree. This was actually a customer who really got on with. Gave us a little bit of cash to invest in the site. It was amazingly generous. So with that money, we got this one here, and this went in right next to this. Is the pod that she stayed in, so it's the logical place for it. So yeah, we've got fond associations of that tree, and it's growing a bit back from the base. So we're letting that do it, and I'll still layer it, and I'll take them off once they've got a bit of roots, and we've got more rootstocks. So it's another yield from the same tree. Underneath, well, we're getting out of currants by the time we get into this block here. That next block next door was, hang on, see, whichever way I've got them, I've got one upside down. Which one maps it on? See, I had too many maps, that's the other thing. Yep, that was blackcurrant next door. So again, another currant variety. This though, we've gone with Honeyberry. So Hascap, you can just see they've got really nice little flowers on. And they get really beautiful, all sorts of interesting shapes with Honeyberry. But I think these are more lozenge shaped. They've got the same sort of currant, same sort of colour as blueberry, but they can vary from really quite acidic to incredibly sweet. And we've got this cultivar here, which we're not entirely certain which one it is. I've got one other to come up to go as the understory on that side, because so there's 3 pods. There's a 4th one to come here in eventually. It's going to be at least a couple of years off, but there'll be a 4th one going in. So we're starting the food forest with the understory, you know, to go around that, so it can be built inside it rather than, you know, planting afterwards. So yeah, there's that apple tree, which again will have honeyberry underneath. This is another Saskatoon, so another Juneberry, and then we've got, this is another Staghorn Sumac, but this was got at last year. It got basically dug up within a week of me planting it, and I put it back in, and it's not thrived, but it's not died either. So it's make or break for it this year. We've got others to replace it. I'm not gonna, you know, keep working away at a tree that wants to die, but we've got another one that we can just swap it out with. And tucked behind the pods here, we have the other pawpaw that we put in that are still looking really well. So, I mean, all things considered, it's this first week outside the greenhouse. We've had fairly windy conditions, and it's looking really well. And the same is on that pod. So, yeah, that is that chunk of food forest. Now we've got other bits and pieces have started to go in around what's going to be the cook shelter over there, and we've got another batch of food forest plants beyond that. But the ones we put in before we put anything else, they had no shelter at all. They've been hammered. So I'm not going to film them. They need a bit of care. So we're not going to go over there. Besides which, you know, this is really, they haven't been planted to the same density they have here with understory and so on, and quite the same care. So yeah, that is a quick walk through what's slowly developing into a pretty respectable food forest. I think once the comfrey comes up this year and starts shading out the grass a little bit, it's going to, you know, really help. And we've got some more trees to go in, you know, bits and pieces and so on that we've got knocking around the front garden that haven't gone in as, you know, a block of this or a section of that. We'll put in those 6 trees in, just, you know, the little bits and pieces that just seem to get left behind. So there's a whole load of them going in the next few weeks as well. We'll just have to give them a little bit of water just to begin with, because it's getting into the season now where, you know, you can't just plant things bare root and expect to get away with it. But yeah, that's a quick walk through. Oh, look behind you. Actually, let's go and have a look. So there's a few Staghorn Sumac dotted around the place. There's a lot of things through here, but this is the new system for this year, and this is the raspberry canes. Now these ones on the end, they're all coming out in different times of year. These ones on the end here don't seem to have done anything, but the others are all looking really well. You can see that they're coming along quite nicely. And raspberries, very aggressive. If they take, they take, and they'll spread and so on. But this is Octavia, and I'm not impressed so far with those. But we'll see. They don't look dead. But anyway, so the others have done well. I suppose that's the important thing, that some of them have taken. So as they come up and they go out, they'll be trained between the wires just to keep them off the ground and stop them tip layering. And shh, I'm filming. And there's a double row of hazel behind that. That's the oldest chunk of that particular shelter belt, going right across the top of the field, and we've got a lot more to go beyond it in time as well. But yeah, the idea being with all of this is we walk up around this track 2-3 times a day easily. So that makes it, even though it's quite a ways from the house, in permaculture terms, it's solid zone 1 in summer. We don't come up here much in winter because, you know, we haven't got customers, we come up here less. But during summer, and in the autumn, when things are just starting to really produce, we walk up here multiple times, and it's a lot of observation time, just looking at the trees and seeing what's doing well and what needs harvesting. So the idea with these is, with having 4 species, the 4 varieties rather, assuming these ever take, the idea being that we can look onto the end and see what looks like it needs picking, and we can just do that row, you know, sometime in the next couple of days. So there'll be a lot more things like this just around the track all the way up, so that it gets the benefit of all that attention. Part of the way through that video, I encountered a tree that I thought had got a bit of windburn. I suspected worse at the time. I've gone back up today and I've had a double check, and sure enough, it's fire blight. So I haven't messed around. There's no cure for fire blight. There's only treatments, and it is possible to take branches off and cut back to undiseased wood and, you know, potentially regraft to that. But there seemed to be a certain amount of staining in the main stem, in the actual trunk of the tree itself, and that can mean that fire blight has just spread too far. So rather than wait a couple of years for it to come back and then regraft and then find out I've still got fire blight in the new graft because it's in the rootstock itself, I haven't messed around. I've just cut them both out, dug the roots out of the ground, and they've been disposed of. So we no longer have those 2 trees on site. I mean, in terms of the video you just watched, it doesn't make any difference. It's just, I want it to be absolutely representative of the situation as it is. You know, we're not editing things to make it look as if, you know, and look, it's all worked perfectly. No, there's problems. You know, these were cheap trees. They came from a fairly cheap shop. I think they cost £6 each. So, you know, we can afford to lose the odd one. You know, fire blight is just one of those things we're going to have to live with. Now, conference isn't particularly resistant to disease, so yeah, we possibly won't plant that one again. There's so many pear varieties that, yeah, we're going to go with ones that you actually want rather than those were cheap. You know, we expected to possibly regraft them eventually anyway. So it's possible that they were even introduced with fire blight. I haven't paid a huge amount of attention to the trees in the last couple of years. I mean, so much else to distract me. It's only this year, really, I've started talking about the possibility of doing a bit of pruning and training come the winter. So I've been paying them a bit more attention. And yeah, sure enough, we've got 2 pairs with fire blight. What's interesting is that there's apple trees between the 2 pairs. And there's no fire blight, at least yet. There's no evidence of fire blight in those apple trees. So, which, you know, apples are susceptible to fire blight the same as pear. So it's likely to have come in the trees themselves rather than something that's, you know, come in and spread on site, hopefully. But we'll see. But rather than just put the video out as if those trees are fine, I wanted to put this little bit at the end just to qualify the fact that, you know, actually 2 of those trees are gone now. And it's not a huge deal. We could plant another pair straight back into that hole without concern of reinfection. And we'll probably go with a pair and maybe a medlar. That'll be a nice thing. See, there's so many options that aren't even pairs. I'm not going to worry about it. But it's just something that I wanted to be in the video because it is representative of that food forest, because obviously things have changed since the video was made.